basically like a review.
Anyway, thank you so much.
Everybody agrees. Even
Welcome to the group chat. Hello and welcome to the group chat on Two-Way, where the ethos is peace, love, and understanding, and the presumption of grace for all. We are so excited that you are here with us. We cannot wait to take your questions. So if at any point you hear something you want to respond to, or if you just want to tell us what you think about the topics we're discussing, please do so. Raise your electronic hand, and we'll be so excited to bring you into the conversation, which is being had by myself, by Dan Turrentine, Nina Turner, Emma Jo Morris, and Robby Soave. He's back, yes, after last week.
How was vacation, Robby? How's life?
All right, so our topics today, we're going to start with the D.C. crime crackdown by the president. We're then going to talk about Russia and the meeting between Trump and Putin. That's supposed to happen tomorrow in Alaska. And if we have time, we're going to talk about Dems in disarray, a topic we seem to enjoy talking about. So those are the topics that are coming down the pike. Raise your hand if you want to join the conversation. All right, first topic. So earlier this week, Trump deployed National Guard troops to the nation's capital, declaring a public safety emergency. He put the Washington Police Department under federal control and stationed National Guard on the city's streets. He has the ability to do this for 30 days, after which he has to seek control for a more long-term solution from Congress, which he seems to want to do and plan to be doing. Let's hear him talk about it. Slot 4.
Mr. President, your federalization of the police has a 30-day limit unless Congress acts to extend it. Are you talking to Congress about extending it, or do you believe 30 days is sufficient?
Well, if it's a national emergency, we can do it without Congress, but we expect to be to Congress before Congress very quickly. And again, we think the Democrats will not do anything to stop crime, but we think the Republicans will do it almost unanimously. So we're going to need a crime bill that we're going to be putting in. And it's going to pertain initially to D.C. We're going to use it as a very positive example. And we're going to be asking for extensions on that, long-term extensions, because you can't have 30 days. 30 days that's by the time you do it. We're going to have this in good shape. And don't forget, in the border, everyone said it would take years and you'd have to go back to Congress. I never went to Congress for anything. I just said, close the border. And they closed the border. And that was the end of it. I didn't go back to Congress. We're going to do this very quickly, but we're going to want extensions. I don't want to call national emergency. If I have to, I will. But I think the Republicans in Congress will approve this pretty much unanimously.
Okay, so complicating this is this question of whether crime actually is on the rise in D.C. or whether it's not. Some of the data seems to show that crime is actually going down from an all-time high from 2023. However, a police commander was literally put on leave for fudging crime statistics, and so not everybody trusts that crime data. We know that in 2024, Washington, D.C. was 4th among the nation's big cities when it comes to homicide rates per 100,000 citizens. Beyond the data, there is a lot of anecdotal evidence that this is an issue that matters a lot to regular people. So let's look at SOT 2A.
Hear from city leaders and others that crime is actually down. Are you seeing that?
No, I'm not seeing it. We're seeing carjackings, the violence in the communities. So we were advocating then for the National Guard to come out, but they said there was no need. But think about how many lives could have been saved just having them on the scene.
And it's not actually just regular residents, unlike what you usually have, in my opinion, just my opinion, to where the media, which is often kind of on the side of the elites and doesn't really understand the struggles regular people have, members of the media themselves have often, of late, been subjected to some of this crime. So let's look at SOT 2B.
We've been talking so much about the numbers, and yeah, usually that's how you play devil's advocate, is you talk about, oh, well, stats say crime is down. However, I can tell you firsthand here in downtown D.C. where we work, right here around our bureau, just in the past 6 months, there were 2 people shot. 1 person died, literally 2 blocks down here from the bureau. It was within the last 2 years that I actually was jumped walking just 2 blocks down from here. And then just this morning, one of my coworkers said her car was stolen a block away from the bureau. So we can talk about the numbers going down, but crime is happening every single day because we're all experiencing it firsthand while working and living.
So I think for a lot of us who are often feel that we're being told by the media not to believe our lying eyes, it was really, this week was amazing because people were like actually breaking character and saying like, no, it happened to me. Okay, Robby, you live in DC. Tell us, first of all, your experiences. Do you know anybody who's been the victim of a crime? Have you yourself? And then how do you see this issue?
Yeah, I absolutely do. I don't want to go off just vibes, but for instance, some journalists responded to you, a tweet from you, Batya, saying, well, I don't know anyone who's, okay, if we're going to play that game, yes, I know somebody who got their car stolen. I know people who've been assaulted. I know someone who was very seriously injured, and it's gotten worse over time. Now, the statistics show us that 2023 was an anomalously high year for murders in particular. It was so bad, like worst in the nation bad. And thankfully, it's come down from there. We have some things moving in a positive direction, but there's no way to look at it other than the baseline crime rate in DC is just too high. It was too high before the pandemic. It's too high now. It's come down a little bit. That's fine. The data is in dispute for the reason you point out. Good reasons to think some trends are better, but it's still way too high. And it's also not confined. I think maybe it used to be confined more to the area south of the Anacostia River, on the other side of where the monuments are and the government seats of government on the other side of the river, which is the poorer area of the city where all the homicides were for a long time, which it's probably not great that we're all ignoring it because it's just happening to poor people. But now what is new in the last, I would say, 2 years is there are these gangs of teenagers for whatever reason. Maybe it's post-pandemic collapse of school closures or support groups or whatever it is. There are bands of 14 to 17-year-olds assaulting people, stealing cars, committing opportunistic crime. It's not like they have this plan to go loot CVS, but they're drinking, they're doing drugs, they're hanging out, it's summer, and at the end of the night they decide to do that. And people are being victimized by that kind of behavior. That's what kicked this whole off, the Doge staffer who got assaulted. It was by one of these bands. They're everywhere, and it's new, and it's very concerning.
So, Nina, what do you make of my framing? I mean, I think there are still a lot of people in the media who were calling this fascism, sending in the National Guard, who were saying it's an abuse of presidential power. What do you think of my attempt to reframe it and say, no, this is actually a kind of democratizing moment because the elites were being subjected to the kind of crime that, as Robby points out, is frequently relegated to poorer neighborhoods, and poor people just are expected to live with it because often progressives kind of deny that it's happening. What do you make of that argument?
I won't say that progressives deny it. I mean, as somebody who has served on local level, so if crime is going down, and Robby pointed out it's going down, but it's still too high, if you are a victim of a violent crime, it's not going down fast enough. So as somebody who served as a Cleveland City Councilwoman, I will say that very clearly. I'm glad that it's going in the right direction. We'll rather have it going down than going up. But for what I don't like about what the president is doing is certainly the 1973 D.C. Home Rule Act signed under President Nixon. The president has the right to control the D.C. police. At the time that bill was signed, President Nixon was a proponent of home rule. It was a way to relieve Congress of day-to-day control of D.C., but still control some mechanisms. So to me, what the president is doing seems to be the antithesis. Just because he can do it doesn't necessarily mean that he should. Now, the president could be doing this a different way. Instead of making locally elected officials enemy of the state, he could say, let's do something about this collectively and see who would bite. And I'm saying that because no elected official worth their salt. Now, if there's some lunatic out there that's elected who says, oh my God, if I run on crime going up, baby, that's for me. Yeah, it might be an outlier like that, but I seriously deny. No elected official is sitting around saying, they want violent crime or any crime.
Aren't they kind of saying, aren't they kind of agreeing?
Based on the behavior that they've been.
I mean, the officials, they want to work with Trump, right? Mariel Bowser, the mayor,
Well, she has no
she
choice.
said,
He said something
she's
nice
not
about her, by the
opposing
way.
this.
Yeah.
The
No, I know
police
she's
union
not.
is supporting it. They want to use these resources. I mean, I think it's perfectly, a conversation can be had about whether this exact show of force is what the city needs. What I think the city needs is like more homicide detectives and a working crime lab. The crime lab that processes ballistics forensics has been offline for years. Now it's back up, but they still can't process bullet-related evidence. So you can't convict people who commit crimes, and that's the #1 deterrent to having more crimes is actually prosecuting people who commit violent crimes. We can't do that because our local government was so incompetent. So that has nothing to do with what Trump's doing, so I'm perfectly happy to have criticisms of how it's going. We need help, and we need.
Well, get people the tools that they need. What I'm saying is that I don't like that the president, for political reasons, is sieging D.C. I'm not saying that it doesn't need his help, but as somebody who served, maybe other people, one of my colleagues, you guys served, I worked for a mayor, I served on the Cleveland City Council, and I remember one time a fight broke out at a park. And the fight broke out, and then people decided to go get guns. They went down the street where kids were literally playing hopscotch and riding big wheels down the street, and they shot up a house. As a Cleveland City Councilwoman, I called the mayor, I called the police, I called my elders, I called activists, and I said, I'm calling everyone. And we held a press conference on the street where 2 babies got shot in their house. And I said, I tell you what, we coming for you. That's #1. #2, if you need help, though, we're going to get you the help you need, but there's going to be a consequence for your action. Now, that is a local councilwoman. I took that upon myself to show that not in our community are you going to get away with doing this. So that's why I'm saying, as an elected official, I just don't believe that elected officials are sitting around saying, bring it on.
Emma, I mean, I think what Nina's saying is, and tell me if I'm misunderstanding this, but what I'm feeling coming off of Nina is a feeling that she feels excluded from the benefits that she would like to have from what Donald Trump is offering. I hear this a lot from people in the Black community who agree with what he's doing, but feel excluded due to the rhetoric, the methodology, what have you. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I mean, I think that Nina is a particular type of public servant, and you know that, like, I respect your work so much. And no, but it's true, and it comes up on the show all the time. All the different types of initiatives that you've taken up and been like super aggressive on because you really care about your neighbors, and that's you. But I think that you perhaps take for granted in the context of being a commentator now, like, you take for granted how much you care and how active you are and how relentless you are at addressing your community's problems. Like, what I was kind of thinking as you were speaking was, like, you know, you were saying, well, he didn't collaborate with them, he didn't bring them into the fold. And, like, I feel like it's been this passive kind of like non-activity that is itself an activity, which is not engaging with what's going on. And in terms of, like, you know, maybe, like, you know, speaking in a way that people, like, honestly, if I was in that position, if I was living in that community, God forbid, I literally cannot imagine it if my baby got harmed by a criminal who was not being dealt with by the cops or by the leadership. I wouldn't care about rhetoric. I would just want somebody to intervene immediately, and that would be my main concern. So, you know, when you talk about rhetoric, I wonder if it's just like, you know, you were kind of talking about motive.
It's not just the rhetoric,
I think, but I just think that there's also a motive too, which is a political motive that, again, we talk about all the time on the show, where there's this knee-jerk, like, reactive no to Trump. But, like, who cares how he's talking? He's like, these are violent crimes.
Dan.
Well, I think that's part, I mean, so one, to Robby's point, there is a crime problem in D.C. And George W. Bush had the famous line, the soft bigotry of low expectations. It's almost became, like, baked in. Like,
yes.
D.C. is a problematic city.
And that's how
like
people talk.
Parts of New York, people just say, it's part of the city. I have family there. I lived there for 20 years. Friends in almost every neighborhood have said in the last few years, to Robby's point, it has gotten worse, right? It is tough to walk home at night. It's tough to go get your car, even in the business community. Nats Park, the stadium or the arena that hosts the Wizards and the hockey and the basketball team, people don't want to walk at night back home to their offices because it is a problem. I think, to your point, when it first was announced, the mayor wasn't that against it. And most Hill staffers were silent because they knew there's a problem. Well, then the base was like, no. And they freaked the you-know-what out and started screaming, this is awful, he can't do it. To me, the problem is, and you were going there, the Democratic Party ought to say, this is insufficient. 30 days, 60 days, whatever. Then what? Right? We're going to introduce a bill to put 100,000 new police officers on the ground in these cities. Why is it just Washington, D.C.? There are red states like New Orleans, Memphis, St. Louis, huge crime problems. Why don't we say to the president, you ought to be calling for the National Guard in the top 10 cities with the highest crime rates? He won't do it, of course.
It's just not policing, though.
Well, he did.
He said he wanted to do it in
yesterday.
more
He said that
cities.
he wants to talk to Republicans about it. But my point is, the Democratic Party has stopped this week. They don't talk about crime. It's all about Trump.
It's passive abuse, but that's why they lost. I mean, that's why they lost in 2024.
Yep.
But see, it's not just policing. If President Donald J. Trump, Mr. President, you want to be great. I know you want to be better than Biden. You want to be better than President Obama. I know you do. We vibing here. Eradicate homelessness. Okay, let's make the requisite investment, because there are more than one way. Just calling in National Guard and more police is not going to totally solve the problem. A police chief, a colleague of mine once said that we deal with symptoms. By the time the police come, they're dealing with symptoms. Yep. So let's deal with the symptoms. Let's deal with the root causes. Part of it, especially when he says to the homeless population, go away, or we're taking you to jail, or we're going to get you some help and all of that. One of the best things that this president can do to show up all the other ones is to make the requisite investment of our tax dollars to eradicate homelessness.
Well,
I have to say, though, I'm not a progressive, but one of the reasons is undeniable that we do not have these problems, thank God, in New York. Well, one is the NYPD, who are unbelievably professional. And the second is there is a right to shelter in New York City. And as a result, we just do not have the same kind of homelessness problems, because there is the expectation and the room and the beds in order to house these people. Joe, I want to bring in community member Joe, and then we're going to pick this right up. Joe. Oh, and who does Joe have with him?
This is Elizabeth.
Hi, Elizabeth.
If I have to hop off early, it's because she's hungry.
Hi. Oh, what a
Just stole the show.
I know,
Yeah.
Yes, stole the show.
Joe, thank you for joining us. Where are you calling from, and what's on your mind?
I'm calling from Louisiana. I had a few topics I wanted to bring up. One, and Batya, this is directed primarily to you, but I know that you've spent a lot of time with the working class people that primarily voted for Trump. And what I'm struggling with is the Trump administration seems so in bed with AI and crypto stuff. And reading all the stuff about even entry-level white-collar jobs being taken out. And I just don't understand how saying we're going to move all the manufacturing back and have great, but it seems like AI, most of these, and what you're going to end up with is an even bigger disparity between rich and poor.
So, Joe, you're breaking up, so we're losing you, but I think I understood your question. Your question is how could we keep saying, like, Trump is this, like, champion of the working class when he's got, he's in bed with crypto, he's in bed with AI, which you're positing would increase the divide between the haves and the have-nots, because AI is basically eviscerating all of these entry-level white-collar jobs.
I lost you too.
Oh no, we lost him. Well, he can. It's a really good question. I'm going to answer it very briefly and get us back to crime. But it's a great question. Maybe he can watch this later on YouTube and hear the answer. From my point of view, and I think from the administration's point of view, they very much see AI as a way of giving blue-collar workers a kind of superpower in the workforce. Trump in the first administration and in this administration, I think if he heard you say, this is really bad for white-collar workers, I don't know that he would mind that so much. I think what he's doing is using things like AI and tariffs and controlling the border in order to kind of reverse what had been the trend since the 70s, which was that white-collar workers got so much wealthier than blue-collar workers. And they're thinking about AI very much in that context, to where you can have a blue-collar worker who, instead of needing 15 years on the job to gain a certain level of expertise, can call upon the knowledge baked into AI in order to make them a more productive worker much earlier on, and thus give them some of the benefit from that. So I hope that answers your question.
Just respond to that super quick.
Sure,
I don't think that that's the mentality inside the Trump administration at all. You were kind of...
Well, I've heard this from the Department of Labor, but I mean...
Oh, really?
Yes.
So I have a totally different impression from also like talking to not the Department of Labor, but staffers around the Treasury and stuff like that. And their idea about it is definitely not to shaft white-collar workers. In fact, I think that there's a huge concern for white-collar workers because the pay for white-collar workers is very low. If you look at, obviously, Zohran Mamdani is a great example of what happens when you leave white-collar workers starving. They turn to left-wing. It's really hard. It's really hard up until like maybe senior management. You're really not living well as a white collar worker, and immigration has not made that better. They're definitely aware of that. I don't think that they see H-1Bs. Slip. I don't think that they see AI as as a way to like level the playing field and bring down white collars and let them kind of get dragged down. I think it's like something more to the effect of that it'll increase efficiency, but they don't see it as something that is going to be an extinction level event for white collar workers.
Okay, so Joe, you got 2 points. I want to move on because I want to get us back to crime. If that's
Yeah, can I say about the homeless thing? No, I want to go back to crime.
Yeah.
Quick point I want to make about DC's homeless problem. Interestingly enough, this is actually more of a federal issue than regular crime in DC, because a lot of people don't know this. The tent encampments in the city that they don't cause much violence, but they do contribute to disorder. They make it hard to use the green spaces. They're very bad. No one wants them. The green spaces in the city are federally controlled. So people are frustrated with Mayor Bowser. Why are you not doing more about this? And she's not my person. I didn't vote for her, but I feel her frustration. She can do nothing about like the tent city that's spraying up in front of.
She control the medians, so she can't do anything about it.
That is the president's job.
And who's supposed to do it? The National Guard?
The National Parks.
The National Park Service. So when there's a shanty town in front of Union Station, that is the federal government's purview.
And I think the other thing that's like kind of has to get put on the table is part of the problem, and this is also here in New York, is because the laws have been changed to where small crime, as it's defined, is not prosecuted. You have this problem where smashing car windows, stealing stuff out of stores is not the police won't respond. Like in New York, they just will tell you, we don't do this anymore. And so part of the thing is, like, again, for the Democratic Party, is there is this chance to have this more holistic conversation about how do we make these communities safe, many of which are democratic cities. And instead, we've just kind of, we are so angry at Donald Trump. You have Chuck Schumer F-bombing that I'm never going to work with him on this to give him more authority, instead of saying, how can we get back on offense on this, quality of life and crime in big cities?
That's the thing. It's like all of these responses have been, well, the numbers have come down. How many times have we heard that? No, it's such arguing from such a position of weakness. Oh, the numbers have come down. Actually, Janine Pirro said this, and like I thought that it was the right response, which was, are you going to tell that to people who have been victimized by this crime, who are looking at kids who have been murdered or beaten?
Well, that's what I said.
Who are like, oh, no, but you
down,
understand, the numbers have gone down, except just for your kids.
If you're the victim, it doesn't.
Exactly.
I do want to share a stat with our viewers. According to the Urban Institute studio in 2023, found that 53% of sheltered residents and 40.4% of unsheltered individuals are working, in terms of those who don't have permanent housing, because a lot of times people stereotype unhoused people as if they don't work, as if they don't try. I mean, I have people that I know who lived in their cars, but they were working, and it's hard. I don't know if it's still the case now, but there was a point where you couldn't work at a job if you didn't have a literal address. So my point is, as a public servant, is that there are multiple ways to deal with this. Policing may be one, but it is an unfair burden on law enforcement to ask them to deal with the social economic ills that prevent, that kind of feed into this.
Let's bring in Chris. Chris, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Tell us where you are and what's on your mind. Hi, Chris.
Hello.
Very
Dan
honored
knows
to have you. I saw you this morning. I thought you were great.
Dan knows what's coming. I guess maybe you do too. First of all, one of my MAGA buddies, we're our buddies, even though he's Trump. I'll call him Trump. I don't know if he's MAGA. He just put a data in the chat that shows that D.C. is not among the top 20 most violent cities in America, number one. Number two, I think it's interesting to have a polite intellectual discussion about how the Dems should be handling it. But as I said this morning, you cannot separate the message from the messenger. When you have a president who lets white nationalists like Stephen Miller and Laura Loomer and Charlie Kirk, and I could do a whole hour on him, starting with him blaming the Austin, Texas fire chief for deaths in a flood that were 3 hours away. What the heck was that about? When you surround yourself with those people, when you regularly call Black leaders low IQ, especially Black women, low IQ, and then you refer to cities run by Black folks as scum and this and that, no, there's no assumption that his intentions are good. So it's not just we want to attack Trump. It's because of his behavior, his repeated tone and disrespect to the Black community. And go check. He's now at 11% according to the latest YouGov poll on Black approval. We're paying attention. And Nina knows this much. D.C. used to be called Chocolate City.
Oh, yeah.
It has a certain place in the mental lexicon of Black Americans. It's not just a D.C. issue. It's a national Black issue. And as I said to Mark this morning, some of y'all need to go listen to Karen Hunter and Roland Martin sometime. Because over where I live, they got a certain view about the help. Yeah, he could do it a certain way. The last thing I'll say is the residents of D.C., if they don't like how their city council is managing crime, guess what they can do like everybody else in America? They can vote their sorry leaders if they think they're sorry out of office. They haven't done that. So, yeah, there might be some logic here, but let's not ignore the real big picture of what this is all about.
Okay.
As a resident of the city,
Okay. Chris, thank you so much. I want actually everybody to respond to Chris. So let's go around. We're going to go Robby, Emma, Joe, Nina, and Dan, and then we're going to move on to Russia. So Robby, go ahead.
As a resident of the city, I don't know why more of our leaders haven't been voted out of office. It makes you think not very well of democracy. It's a ward. The city's divided into wards. The council member who represents the ward I'm in. So I'm in a nice neighborhood of the city that is nevertheless prone to a lot of this new kind of crime I've been describing, but is also in the same ward as across the Anacostia River, where there historically has been so much homicide and is very low income. Our ward city council member, we effectively have no one right now because he was arrested for taking bribes in the most cash passed to him in a car. He lives in my apartment building. He was arrested outside the apartment building. So we're disenfranchised as a result of his obvious and appalling crimes. This is the
Robby, you should run. There's an opening.
Maybe I'll announce my candidacy.
Okay, Emma.
I'm going to get everybody their scooters back.
Emma, respond to Chris.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of keyed in on a perspective that I'm not sure. I mean, I didn't see it from this way, and maybe I'm naive or something, but that kind of came out of nowhere to me, and I definitely didn't hear this from Trump. But, well, first of all, calling Stephen Miller a white nationalist is just, he's a Jew, okay? You can't really say that. You can oppose his immigration policy, but I don't think it's fair to call him that. I think he would definitely take a lot of issue with that, and I think there's a lot in Jewish history that would make him not a white nationalist if he has any connection to it. But in any event, that aside, taking a racial view of this issue, to me, I didn't even go there, and I don't even know where that is so not. I see this in a very simple way, which is my impression of how Trump sees it too. Violent people are committing violence against innocents, period. I don't understand where race even enters this conversation. People of all races commit crimes, and people of all races are victim of crime. Nina just told a story that I didn't get the impression was in a white neighborhood.
Do you agree more with Chris or more with Emma? Do you see this in a racial lens?
Yeah, I do. I can have something in common. I mean, I see Emma's point of view too, but yeah, as a Black woman in America, I always see race. Always. There is a racial component to this. That still doesn't mean that something shouldn't be done about it, but there's a racial component, and Chris raises some very real issues. I think people who are not black don't necessarily have to see it that way, because you don't have to live a dual reality. I mean, Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois said in Souls of Black Folks that black folks are in one body warring, one to be American, you know, and the other is African, in terms of how we are treated, you know, in the United States of America. So Chris raises some very good points. And I think the president does have some bigoted ways. I also believe that Biden had bigoted ways too. I mean, this man said he didn't want his white children to go to school with black children because he didn't want them to go to school in the jungle. So, you know, I'm gonna tell the truth about it. But and then being an African-American history professor too, I mean, I just live the history all the time. So I definitely understand Chris's point.
Dan, I want to get you in on this. I sometimes feel like this problem Chris raises, like, Black Americans are overrepresented as the victims of violent crime. Yes. And it's something that's very hard to get at, because I think they're put in this position where on the one hand, that's a fact. On the other hand, we do have a history of over-policing in certain communities. And I think, could this be why it's so hard for Democrats to find a way to talk about crime in a way that makes their coalition feel included in the benefits of addressing it rather than excluded or offended by the way it's being addressed?
That's a great question. I mean, I think for D.C., Trump, by all accounts in his first term, did not like the homelessness. He did not like hearing about crime, right? It is where he is. When he would go to his golf courses, when he would go to his hotel, it drove him nuts. Sean Spicer has talked about this. He could do it in D.C. He can't take over, order the National Guard in Memphis. He can't. So one, it was, personal for him. Two, he saw it. But again, we're talking about Trump, and we're not talking about the issue of crime. Our party used to be pretty tough on crime. We did not tolerate it. As people moved back into cities in the 90s, in 2000, a lot of white people moved back into the cities, upper class. You had all these apartments, gentrification, everything. People loved that you could walk around cities at night. You go to the grocery store, your kids could go to school. In the last couple years, we've swung now to where we don't want to talk about more policing. We don't want to talk about changing these prosecution laws that, in my opinion, were insane. Like, we tried not prosecuting small crimes. It bred more crime. I have seen it in New York City. When we lived in D.C., we saw it all the time. If I can break in and steal sunglasses, I'll take a bag. If I can take a bag, I'm going to take a jacket. Take a jacket, I'm going to take a car. Like, how far before you will prosecute me, right? So to me, the fact that the Democratic Party is still obsessed about, like Chris is talking about, Trump, Trump, Trump.
All right, let's move on to Russia. We can come back to this if we have more questions about this. All right, so tomorrow, big news, big summit in Alaska. Apparently where, if you're Sarah Palin, you can see Russia from there. All right, so this is like a long-awaited meeting. So just how it's going to go down. The summit's going to start with a head-to-head between Trump and Putin and their translators. It will be at 11:30 a.m. local time, which will be 3:30 here in New York for anybody who's planning to watch it. There will be a news conference, a joint news conference afterwards. Whether both of them will be at the news conference or not, subject to debate, some reporting yes, some reporting no. The primary topic is going to be Ukraine, but there are a lot of things for these two leaders to discuss. I think probably we all want this war to be over, that the bloodshed has been horrific and horrifying, and honestly, just the appetite that the American people have to continue funding it has pretty much evaporated. Donald Trump famously said again and again and again that he was going to be able to solve this within a week. I believed he had the power to do so. I was very wrong about that. But he does seem very anxious to get a peace deal. Now, from the beginning, since Putin invaded, there were sort of two schools of thought. There was the school of thought that he is a murderer and a madman who doesn't believe that Ukraine is a separate country, that he's trying to create a greater Russia and wants to subsume the whole Ukraine. And there was another line of thinking that said, no, this is a rational actor. Sure, he's a dictator and a murderer, but the threat posed by NATO, Ukraine being included in NATO, for example, is a legitimate threat, and that as a result, he invaded Ukraine, not to justify that, but to say that this was the actions of a rational actor, making a point that this was, an unacceptable encroachment on Russian sovereignty, that he doesn't, in fact, want to eat up the entire Ukraine, but that he was trying to create a kind of security buffer of the kind that we ourselves perhaps might have done, under the Monroe Doctrine. Nina, first of all, do you agree with this, that these were the two main streams of thought, but also where do you land on this issue? How have you seen this? Do you think this is an issue the United States should be heavily involved in? What are you expecting from tomorrow's meeting?
I do agree with the two main lines of thought. And listen, if President Trump can bring peace, let him bring it. I want it. Let's jump in, just dive into the ocean of peace. If he can do it, let's do it. We want to bathe in it.
I'm diving into
I want a backstroke in it, baby.
Friday night, that's where you're at.
Yeah, I want him to, please, accomplish this, Mr. President. We're bathing in peace. I'm taking the B-roll on this in terms of, that's pretty much how I feel about it. I don't know how he's going to do that without the president of Ukraine. He should have been invited too.
Well, so today Trump said there's going to be a second meeting. He's like, the most important meeting is going to be the second meeting. Now, Dan, I'm very, very relieved that this meeting is happening, not least because I've been pushing off the inevitable, which is admitting publicly that you have been right about Russia this whole time, and I have been wrong.
Don't go that far, Batya. Don't go that far. Not at all. Not at all.
So how do you see this?
I think I am very curious to see if Putin pushes for hey, I just want a little bit more, or comes in and starts trying to lecture Trump about kind of why he's wrong, how Trump handles this. Because I agree with you. He wants a deal. I think the country, the world wants a deal. I think ultimately the issue is Putin cannot be allowed to have the rest of Ukraine. And there is going to be a European, and Trump said, apparently according to the European leaders, the Americans would join in a security force that basically is going to become like a DMZ we have between the Koreas and kind of like we had between parts of Germany. To say to Putin, you're not going any further, right? I'm going to make this up, 100,000 troops of German, French, American, British. Does Putin hear that? Because he keeps trying to push for no troops, right? I won't take all of Ukraine, but there can be no defenses, around. And basically he's just saying, I'm going to take it later. So I'm heartened by what happened this week in terms of what the Europeans are saying, and I'm very curious to see where Putin comes down.
Robby.
Yeah, I keep having conversations with people who are more hawkish toward Russia, and I'll be like, look, I don't aspire for Ukraine to lose a single inch of territory to Russia, but we have to live in the real world. If Vladimir Putin intends to conquer Ukraine over time, that is going to happen unless we're willing to fight World War III against Russia. And we're not. No one is. No one is advocating for that. So all we could do is then make it more difficult for him to do that, by supplying Ukraine, but it would still eventually happen. This deal, this theoretical deal we're hoping happens, either stops that or delays that or maybe puts in place a permanent infrastructure where that can't happen at the cost of Russia taking the part of Ukraine it's now conquered. I think that is by far the best, most reasonable, realistic deal we can get. I think Trump is unique in that he can accomplish that. I'm very heartened by what happened between Azerbaijan and Armenia last week or the week before last. Time flies. I think that's great. And if Trump pulls this off, not only will he deserve a Nobel Peace Prize, we will have to invent a prize superior to the Nobel Peace Prize to award him. Barack Obama got a Nobel Peace Prize for breathing, which is offensive to me. I'm trying to come up with a prize that he would deserve if he pulls it off.
Trump does deserve credit for continuously trying to get peace. He does.
Well, that's what I think really distinguishes this negotiation from past negotiations, and Putin said just as much, is that there is real sincerity, obviously on behalf of the United States, and real focus that is genuine, it seems, on really trying to mediate and finish this problem. I think that the thing that America First really brings to this negotiation is that we don't care. We don't have a dog in this fight. Obviously we have an interest in the security of Europe, but, what do we have to do with Ukraine? America First and MAGA can't really identify that. And I think because of that, that allows Trump to really come in good faith to just say, this is your beef, and I'm just trying to make death stop, please, because that doesn't like that creates instability, and that's not in my interest, but that's the extent of it. And I think that really what Trump is looking for, and Putin understands, and Zelensky should understand, because he is involved in this too, is that Trump's looking further east than Russia in all of this, and Russia is very intimidated by China. And I think that Trump is ideally in like the 4D chess of things, looking to have both Ukraine and Russia, at least, if not allies, at least, let's say in the Western kind of part of this field, because at this point we have gotten totally hostile with Putin, and it has pushed him towards China in a way that I don't think he's necessarily totally comfortable with or wants.
Well, but do you think we pushed? I mean, Putin is avowed that he wants to. He hates America. I mean, he does not believe it. He does not believe in the West.
What are you talking about?
Putin is
avowed that he hates America.
He does. He wants our hegemony to end. He does not want us to be the dominant power in the world.
Can you cite when the last time he said that was?
I mean, I don't have it off the top of my head, but I can
well,
put it on.
No, he speaks
I can put it on
frequently
X.
about
he frequently
wanting.
talks about the American dominance of the world needs to end.
Yeah,
there
he says
need
that a lot.
to be
well, he talked about perhaps like the color revolution we had in Ukraine in that context, but he does not say like death to America, Iran.
Well, no, he doesn't say it Iran style, but he says he wants America weakened. He wants us weakened and out of the rest of the world.
Well, because our Atlantic Council foreign policy has been havoc and chaos for him, obviously. America's hegemony, quote unquote, the blob, has been very destructive to not only Putin, but all over the world. And I think that there are many people, at least me included, who definitely agree that the blob has a huge problem and that it is totally out of control and isn't even necessarily accountable to the president.
Whoa. I think that there's a much bigger conversation of
But I think that's what Putin is talking about, is the blob, not America per se, like I said, Iran style.
But even if Putin said death to America because he has nukes, America's not going to do a daggone thing.
No, that's not true. We've just funded Ukraine.
But not back to Robby's point about a WW3. He can say that all he wants to. He can say whatever he wants to say. Nobody's going, you're only going so far. With another
and he doesn't want to cross our nukes either.
No, I get it, but you know what I mean.
Oh, no.
I think
he's going to be treated
the point that Dan is trying to make is an accurate one, which is that, like,
he's not our friend.
He's not our friend. At the same time, I think he's very eager to become our economic friend again.
Well, that's exactly what is.
And I think that there is that Donald Trump actually is very aware of the extent to which he has a lot of cards to play here.
Does he want to be our economic friend, or does he want to improve his economy but still not be our friend?
We can all.
Don't all.
That's the thing that I think.
Look, I hear your point, Dan. I don't want to replace. I don't want to replace U.S. Hegemony, despite all its flaws and the things that Emma brought up that I agree with. I certainly don't want to replace a U.S.-run world order by a Russian-run world order, or especially not a Chinese world-run order. And that is we've got to keep our eyes on the ball.
Can I just say, I think it's way too reductive to talk about friends or foes in terms of foreign policy. That is not how Trump thinks about things. That is not how Putin thinks about things, that's for sure. They think about things in terms of our national interest. It's national interest. It's not, I want to give you a hug or go for dinner.
It's our national interest to have friends.
But don't we really never really know?
Have cooperation is maybe what you mean, but
do you think China has our best interest at heart?
Well, definitely not. We have opposing national interests with China.
We have opposing national interests with Russia all over the place.
Sure, but more primarily with
But
China.
Emma, aren't you glad that the United States is friends with Israel? I mean, that's a friendship. Like, you're saying that doesn't exist, but that is a friendship that goes beyond interest.
Sure. Like, I think Israel is like it's a very small country that has a lot of crossover in terms of citizenship and family with the United States in terms of its people. So I think that's a bit of a different situation than Russia. Yes, it's a friendship, but Israel serves a strategic interest for the United States.
Well, Dan believes that Ukraine does. Okay, yes. I want to bring in Anthony.
I don't think
Anthony,
they're misaligned.
Thank you so much for joining us. Tell us where you're calling from and what's on your mind.
Sacramento, California. What's up, Dan?
Hello, Anthony. Good to see you again.
Thanks God, Dan. I have two questions. So the whole Ukraine situation, it's interesting because I think personally, even though, like I said, I'm a registered independent, I'm going to be honest. I do not like the way that Biden handled the conflict. I think he was not able to bring Putin to the table like Trump can. Whether that's good for good or ill, that doesn't really matter. I don't know if Marco Rubio is going to be there. So one would be, why don't you guys think that Biden absolutely failed in trying to end the war? And two, about the DC crime situation. So I've said this before, is when you look at these crime statistics, because I have friends of mine who work in the local police department, just because those numbers are down doesn't audit, those are very anecdotal, even if the crime numbers are down. So I don't know what that has to do with the whole DC situation, though.
Okay, great questions. Thanks so much. Robby, why did Biden fail on Ukraine?
Because he didn't want to negotiate, right? He took the position from the beginning that we will fund the Ukrainian opposition until the end of time, put no limits on it whatsoever. Yeah. I think it was a very naive plan from the start, because while Ukraine could prevent and did an admirable job defending their country, I'm sympathetic to them, they were invaded, obviously. But we gave them naive and false hope that we could fund them forever, that commitment would never end, and also that they would be able to make use then of the weapons we're giving them forever. They have a much smaller population. They started having to conscript people outside the normal age range for fighting. So it didn't make sense to like a temporary assistance to stave off Russian conquest of the country while we negotiate to get a deal. That made perfect sense to me, but that's just not what Biden said.
I will one up that, and I'm very curious what you make of this, Dan. It's my view that why did the Democrats decide that Russia was the great enemy and not China, when it was President Barack Obama who basically laughed Mitt Romney off the stage for suggesting that Russia was our greatest foe? Why did they do this 180 to where they effectively poked the bear, insisting that, Ukraine NATO membership was on the table? And it's my view they did that because of Russiagate. They viewed Donald Trump as a puppet of Putin, or believed they could cast him as such. And as a result, Russia became an enemy because it was tainted by Trump, and they could use it to,
It was so cynical.
That's what do you think that's?
I disagree with that. Look, I think two things. I think one, Obama did try to have the whole pivot to China, right? And it was kind of a failure. TPP was a part of that obviously ended with the election of Donald Trump, which ironically is now kind of back on the table to form this economic coalition to encircle Trump. I think Joe Biden's juices get flowing on foreign policy. It always has. He was chairman of the Foreign Policy Committee. He still, when he publicly speaks, talks about like his greatest accomplishment was I put NATO back together. This is his telling. So I think he saw this as like his Churchillian moment of strength where he could lead the world. I don't think he truly had the energy to do this. I also think a huge fail was he didn't say to the Europeans, look, we'll help you a little bit. This is your backyard. This is your fight. You guys are going to ultimately have to put both money and probably soldiers if you truly want to help Ukraine, because as Robby said, ultimately Russia will grind down Ukraine if it is just a mano fight. I think Biden just never believed in this, like, okay, now let me try to negotiate a peace. He just thought, like, I'm Churchill.
Nina?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to what you said, Batya. I do agree about the Russia boogeyman or boogie woman. In terms of Biden, just lacked gravitas, baby. He just didn't have the gravitas.
No one was scared of him.
Yeah.
I want to tell a very brief story, which I think really explains Donald Trump's foreign policy in this exact regard. I was once on the subway in New York. I've told this story before. And there was a slightly crazy person, like, sort of twitching and talking to himself and, like, making little, nothing too bad, And we pulled into the station, the doors open, and, like, a really crazy person got on. Like a person who was, like, gesticulating and screaming and, like, whatever. Boy, did that slightly crazy person sit up straight, get his stuff together, and act completely normal, because he, recognized game,
The shock collar crazy person came on the train.
Right.
Trump is the crazier person. And so all these people who...
Madman theory.
They knew that they could manipulate Joe Biden. He'd never do a thing to them. They see Donald Trump and they're like...
But ultimately, you can't war your way to peace. That's one thing. But that was a good example, Batya. And then foreign policy is what is happening now, but also long-term. I mean, a lot of times we don't know whether or not the actions of a president or a Congress, the total impact that it will have until many years or decades.
I also don't know whether it's even the strength of Trump or just the relative weakness of Biden. I get the sense that world leaders
Might be a little bit of
Biden.
both.
Maybe it's both. We're not taking Biden seriously because of the age issue.
The gravitas.
Thought they could
Come
walk
on, Robbie.
all over
Name
him.
another politician who could get Putin to the table.
Yeah. No, I'm not trying to undersell Trump's success in this. It's just,
well, we don't know. I mean, we got to see. Now he's got to land the plane.
Well,
Yeah.
that's it.
But step one is a conversation.
Can you name another politician who could have gotten this meeting?
Obviously,
back?
Kamala Harris.
I mean, live, but I think LBJ could have done. I mean, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I meant a live one.
I think the only way that
And
we got to
walls.
step one, the only way that enough trust was established, I think, by both sides to get this far, which, I mean, okay, we're moving inch by inch, but it is inch by inch
Yeah, it's
that is
moving.
being moved. And I think that the only way is by trust, and I think that the only way that that trust was earned and that Trump was able to be received in good faith was because he did distance himself from that Victoria Nuland disgusting institution that has dictated our foreign policy, our official foreign policy that Trump just completely rejects. And that's how he's able to be taken seriously by somebody like Putin. Not that Putin, like I guess, to have enough trust to have a conversation where both sides really do feel like he is
I totally agree with that. You know,
a resolution.
There's been this narrative in the liberal media, like, why does he always say nice things about Putin? This is why. Because in his head, he's decided this is how I get him to the table by making it clear I repudiate all of that.
Yes.
One thing that I think is going to be a huge sticking point, people seem to have forgotten that at the beginning of this war, the Donbas region, which is where all of, the negotiating is going to have to happen, that sort of, sliver, was not actually part of Ukraine. There was a civil war there, and it had declared independence. And I was reporting this out. If you talked to people who lived there, they would say to you, why has Putin not come and saved us from this genocidal neo-Nazi Ukrainian regime? I bring this up only to say that I can see how the discourse over the last 2 years from doing punditry around this issue, if you bring that up, there's like legit denial about it now on the, among the Democrats, on the left, on the people who want to keep funding this war and live under this fantasy that Ukraine can win. And I think that if Zelensky comes in thinking, I'm going to have all of Europe and all of the Democrats backing me to say we're not giving up this land, he has to withdraw from the Donbas, which in the intervening 2 years Putin has annexed. That is going to be such a non-starter, and I think will be a huge mistake. What do you guys think?
I say this all the time to people who put Ukrainian flags in their bio. I'm like, okay, but if the Russian-speaking people in the farthest east part of Ukraine want to be part of Russia, I don't know even on what ideological grounds I would take the position that they're not allowed to do that. Do we think that nations never change territories, or that people of an ethnic or cultural heritage never disassociate from one nation? Maybe they want to be on their own. If they want to be on their own, I'm fine with them being in their own country. If they want to be part of Russia, I'm fine with that. Obviously, not everyone there wants that, but this is how you end up with a Virginia and a West Virginia.
Nobody even, how are we the ones litigating? Nobody even knows that the Democrats don't go there because they have no idea what they're talking about. They have no idea or stake in the ethnic composition of the Donbass. Like what? How is this our conversation? This is not our conversation.
By the way, this would be considered like Putin talking points, right? Like you're not like.
Well, I think at the end of the day,
what?
It is Russian right now. So the only way it is not is to drive Russia out of that region, which I don't think anyone has the appetite or the capabilities, short of like the United States Army rolling in with 500,000 people. Therefore, Putin is going to get that land. The question is, does he get a little bit more to end this? And that, I think, is going to be where the sticking point is, which is reportedly he wants like the 25% of the region that they don't control to be given to him. And the Ukrainians, according to the reports, Zelensky has said he knows they're going to have to give up some of this land.
Nina, in March or May, I don't remember, of 2024, J.D. Vance, before he was vice president, gave a speech, and it was called, "What Would a Foreign Policy for the Middle Class Look Like?" And he said something that I actually found very moving. He said that it's obvious that our foreign policy should be dictated by the moral impulses of the American electorate. I wonder if you agree with that and what you think a foreign policy that respected the American middle class and the American working class would look like? Like, what would the broad contours look like?
I would need to know the fine print of what J.D. Vance meant by that.
Well, basically, he said it's pro-Israel and not pro-Ukraine. If I summarize it vulgarly.
These two are in opposite.
To me, I mean, I wish that the president was truly operating from an American first perspective. And what that would mean is that all of these investments that are being made in these foreign wars, more of that would be invested here at home to help the American people. You think about domestic tranquility. I mean, we could all analyze what that means for us. What do we think that means for people? But ultimately, folks are suffering in this country. The AP poll that came out that said that people are stressed about food, they're stressed about not making enough money on their jobs, and they're stressed about housing. How about we take some of that money and invest it right back here at home to help? People say they're middle class, but what the hell is middle class anymore? You know, it keeps moving. There's a ruling class, and there's the rest of us, as far as I'm concerned. And we're going to have ladies and lords in the United States of America, whether we want to admit it or not, because there's a small sliver of people who are born into the obscene level of wealth that are always going to be in control. And then there's going to be a group of people that exist right now who are always going to be in a permanent underclass. And it's the permanence of that, to have people in Gen Z not believe. It used to be, you know, if you were boomer or X or something, you know, the boomers would say very clearly that I want my children and my grandchildren to be able to do better than me. And now from boomer to Z, you have a lot in the Z who just don't even see that for themselves.
So I feel like probably all of us would agree with that. No, less foreign aid, more investment.
Well, I think I think the huge like looming showdown we're going to see in 2028 is increasingly both parties. You take what you guys have all said, is Israel, because it is becoming very popular for people under 40 in both parties to say, why are we aiding Israel? Why are we involved there?
Dan, I can tell you, the Israelis are going to get there before we do.
Well, so I mean,
they've realized that this is a real crutch for them.
They take to the streets.
I mean, like, they're sick of the aid. Like, there's a real. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, I mean, I was just going to say, like, that is, I think, the one part of America First that is in conflict. You said J.D. Vance said, you know, but Israel. Mm-hmm. I think if Steve Bannon runs against J.D. Vance, I think this is one of those wedge issues, because Bannon apparently got upset. Israel's bringing influencers from the right to Israel to see the conflict, and Bannon apparently suspended one of the women in his network who was going to go, or went, I think.
Wow. I read it in Axios today, and I didn't ask. I don't know. I was honestly out. Today.
But I think this is, you know, watch this. That's the last piece of America First that has an inherent conflict.
Yeah. I just know the Israelis themselves are having this conversation about American aid because they see it very much as as control, and they only have 2 weeks worth of bullets, and that means that the Biden administration could tell them you can't go into Rafah and other things that were against their interests. Robbie.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an enthusiast for ending all foreign aid, not specific to Israel. It's just all of it.
Is there any foreign aid you support?
No, that's a big zero.
What about American soft power? Like, what would you support?
They can buy weapons from us, and Israel can too. I wouldn't stop selling them weapons, but right now we give them money that then they're supposed to use to buy weapons from us. They can buy it from us. We just don't need to pay for it.
Influence in terms of like values, in terms of having a sphere of influence, in terms of spreading democracy. Do you believe in any of that?
I think we should do trade. I'm for, you and I disagree on the tariffs, but we can threaten them in order to bring down the trade barriers. But I want to have good economic relations with countries that share American values and want to profit from what we have, and we profit from what they have. And I think we become better liked in that way. And then those countries develop more healthy economic systems and hopefully better governance. That happens sometimes, doesn't always happen. That's my foreign policy. It's not military power.
You don't recognize that there's any.
I mean, we should defend our allies have promised.
No, I'm not allies, but that there's any like real threat to American life that is taking place across the globe, that is being waged or fought for us by our allies.
I mean,
like Iran, for example.
But I just don't. I think it brings us into greater tension to be more involved in that, and the American people vote so clearly whenever they can to say they want less of that. It doesn't need to be an all or nothing thing. My point of view is that we are already overextended, and I want to rein us in wherever possible, because I know it will not happen overnight that we reduce all foreign aid to zero, we close all the foreign bases. It's not going to happen. So I will push for incremental reform here in the direction that I know is popular with the American people on both sides of the political spectrum?
I mean, I just think that the challenge with that is, look at what China's doing with its belts and roads, or what is it, bridges and suspenders? I forget what the phrase is that they use.
It's called the Belt and Road.
Belt and Road.
It's kind of a big deal.
Yes, where they are building airports, they are building ports, they are doing all of these infrastructure projects to help these countries modernize, to have better economies. But why are they doing it?
Yeah.
Because it's the Godfather thing of like, someday I'm going to ask you to do a favor, and by the way, I'll take your raw minerals, and I'm going to take some of the labor out of your country. If we cut back from that,
well, we can do that if that's an agreement and a transaction, where our company builds this, and then
it's not our company, it's our country. I mean, this is where the USAID stuff long term is going to have a problem. Some of those small acts that we did to help their population with HIV, to help, with malaria, people were grateful to the United States. It made them say, I like the United States. The more
did it?
What?
Oh, sure it did.
Sure. Okay, I'm not going to disagree with you necessarily, but there's a deep skepticism, I know, among conservatives that did buy us the level of approval for the.
We are at time.
I don't know how much bang we got for that buck.
We'll talk about this next time. Thank you all so much for joining us. This was the group chat, and we will see you here next week. Thanks so much.
Thank you.